Hey, Contessa, how's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am so good today. It's wonderful to be here on a Friday with you to chat and hang out. I just wanted to create a space and opportunity for us to have a dialogue. When we first connected, I just knew immediately that we were kindred spirits and that I wanted to share more of you with my community and hear more about your story. So I thought it would be fun for us to just have a chat and learn more about each other and then share that with our communities.
Yes, that sounds like so much fun. Like seriously, whenever we first connected, I felt like, yeah, I found a soul sister out in the world.
Right. It's
So
awesome.
I'm excited to share you with my ladies, and I'm just really excited again to connect with you.
Thanks, Contessa. So I'm based in San Francisco. Where are you?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. That's right. And that was also one of our soul sisters because for all of you who don't know, I'm from Oklahoma. So I have a little place in my heart for Texas. We're like frenemies. And so I used to spend a lot of my summer vacations in Texas, actually. My family would drive down, go to the Six Flags down there and hang out. So, and my country accent will probably get thicker today because anytime I'm talking to my country girls, it just comes out a little bit more.
Do it, y'all.
Right, exactly. All y'all. We got to make sure. Oh my gosh. So I want to start off just asking you to tell us your story in whatever way would feel good to you. But yeah, what's your journey been like? What's your life? Tell
Yeah,
us.
every time I get asked this question, I think, gosh, where on earth do I even start, right? Like,
Right?
there's just so much to tell there. But essentially, the Cliff Notes version is at 3 years old, my biological mother just wanted nothing to do with myself and my sister and left us on the side of a highway here in Dallas. And we never really heard. And I started to say yeah, I'm going to switch that up a bit because she literally just sent me a friend request on Facebook. Ah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's wild.
But at 6 years old, I was raped by a stranger. Really, that was kind of facilitated by her. She knew them, knew they were neighbors, knew they were coming over. And, that was really the last time I had any interaction with her until now. And then I was sexually abused by a stepbrother for quite a while in my youth as well. I went in the military. I moved around quite a bit. And just from being when you go through childhood trauma, it's not something that disappears, right? You don't just heal from it magically. And so I found
Yeah.
myself in repeated situations that were abusive and traumatic and just thought that it was normal. Of course, that's just how
Yeah.
people live, right? Until I found myself sitting on the couch with my husband who handed me the phone, and it was Suicide Crisis Hotline. I really did have a plan. I was done. I was just teaching him the ropes. I had my kids at the time. My son was 1 year old, and my daughter was just 9 months old. And both of them were, on my legs, hanging off my legs as he handed me the phone. And I just remember how numb I felt at that moment, how completely disconnected from any sense of self or any potential life that there may be,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And in that moment, that suicide crisis hotline worker asked me one question, and it made me so mad that I realized I had felt something different other than numb in a really long time. And her question was, "Do you have a plan?" Well, hell yeah, I had a plan.
Mm, mm.
I wasn't sharing it with anybody, and it made me mad that she asked me that question. And in that moment, I made a choice, and it forever changed the course of my life. That's why I'm here today. That's why we're able to have this conversation. I told her no. Number one, because I didn't want to share my plan, but number two,
Mhm.
because internally I was having a conversation with myself of, do I really want to do this, right?
Right.
I said no. I was not only saying no, I'm not telling you my plan, but I was also saying no to myself, that this wasn't going to be an option, that I needed to figure out another way. And so that kind of set me on a path of healing myself, of just going and doing anything and everything I could. If it came across in a Facebook ad or somebody mentioned it, I went out and did it, bought it, read
Wow.
it. I,
Yeah.
I was like just like soaking it up,
Snatching everything up you could. Yeah.
right? And what I realized once I started this climb out of the hole that I was in was that I had a natural knack for connecting with other women and helping them through their journey as I was going through my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And while I had to put that on pause because I needed to heal myself first, when I came out of that, that was the only thing that was left on my heart was that I had to now teach other women what it was that I learned for myself because
Nice.
there's so much pain in this world, and
Mm.
to help one heart at a time means that that one heart can then turn around and do the same thing, right? So it feels like a
Yes,
ripple effect.
I love
So
that.
that's a little bit about me.
Right on. Okay, hold on just a second. I'm gonna put my shade down a little bit because I feel like I'm getting
A lot of
blinded by the gray, the great gray sky of San Francisco today. Man, Contessa. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I had no idea, some of those parts of your story and can resonate with a lot of the parts of your story for sure. Can't wait to hear more about this whole friend request. Holy shit, like that's a thing.
like for real.
Like, okay, all right. Oh my Lord.
See. We'll see. I'm still processing on that one. I'll figure out. I just
Uh,
let it settle on my spirit and on my heart and see, does
yeah,
it really deserve any space in my life right now? Do I want to go down that road, or
right.
am I okay with the way I've been
The
already?
way it is. I
I've
get
been
that.
42 years for crying out loud.
Well, right. Oh man, I hear you.
So tell us more about you. Like, share your story now. I love this
Mm,
part because I feel like when we connected the first time, we connected on this point too, that sharing our stories is something that can, number one, be healing, but also serve to help somebody else who might
yeah,
be struggling right now. So
big time.
share you with us.
Thank you for that. Well, I always feel similarly to how you started, which is like, where do I start? Where is the beginning of this story? Oh man, today I feel like the beginning of the story, it begins when I was 5 years old and my grandfather came to live with our family. And Contessa, I was super excited about that because my older brother and sister, they were quite older, 9 and 10 years older. So my little 5-year-old butt was just getting in the way. That's really all they felt like. You were just a nuisance. Get out of my way. And so when my grandfather arrived, I was like, ooh, captive audience. Okay. And he really was. He quickly became a companion to me, and I would run home from school and go straight to his room and was there like hanging out, playing, and watching TV together. And we often sat out on the front porch. That was one of my favorite things to do. We lived in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and right across the street from this big park. And so I loved sitting, front porch sitting, a little something about that, right? And you just talk and hang out, watch the people in the park. And it was fabulous. And one day when I was 10 years old, we were sitting out on the front porch, and I always snuggled up with him. I was a very cuddly kid. If there was a lap, I was in it. And I loved cuddling with him too. But this day, I felt him reach around and touch my breast. And honestly, Contessa, I was 10 years old. I barely had breasts, right? It was just like just beginning to, mature. And had like some sense that that was not where he should be touching me, but also felt like he was just confused, like he didn't realize that he was touching me there. It was an accident. And so I started to shift and try to get away, but he gripped a hold of me tighter. And then the panic set in, and like the fear and the oh my God and the oh shit. And I dissociated. I didn't know that's what I was doing then at that time, but I just remember feeling very fuzzy and very confused, and eventually did kind of snap out of that. And I jumped up and I ran to my parents' bedroom. And still to this day, I'm always really fascinated by how quickly the thoughts and the feelings start. Like, I'm bad. I did something wrong. I'm dirty now, right? Like all of this like heavy burden immediately present, and immediately feeling unsafe in my home, this place that had been so nurturing and wonderful for so long. When I'll fast forward a little bit, my mom one day just happened to walk by and see what he was doing, and she snatched me off that porch so fast. And I was actually scared. I actually thought, like, yes, I am in trouble now, because of the way she was responding, but she was just scared, right? She wanted to get me away from him. And they moved my grandfather out of the house right away. And, I'm really thankful that I had that level of support from my parents, because I know, having done this work for 12 years now, that's not always the case. And it's hard to deal with when your experience is denied or rationalized. So even though they wanted me to get counseling, I was like, hell no, I'm not talking to anyone about this. I am pushing it away. I am pretending that everything is okay. And that's pretty much what I did for all of my teenage years. I just tried to pretend that everything was all right. But girl, I was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. I was, using sex to try to feel good enough. I was terrible at trusting people. I was constantly feeling, depressed or suicidal. And when I hit 18, I went off to college and I met a boy. And this boy was the first person to really say to me, like, look, you've got to handle this. Clearly, you're still being, troubled by this experience. And so, on one hand, I thank him greatly, because he really did give me that little shove that I needed to acknowledge what was going on and to start getting some support. But on the other hand, we spent 10 years together, and he was very abusive during that 10 years. So when we were divorcing, I had been trying to do all this healing work, right? I'd been going to therapy, but I was in a relationship where I was being traumatized, so it wasn't really working that well, right? It's like, okay, how do I deal with past trauma when I'm dealing with current trauma? And it was when we divorced, and I was in my new apartment, and all I had was a lamp and a sleeping bag. Life had just been stripped. And I just remember having this really clear moment, Contessa, of this feeling of like, I have got to get my shit together, like right now. Very similar to what you were describing. I think survivors have this in common. There's always this moment where it's like, girlfriend or boyfriend, if you're a guy, right? Like, now, do something now. And if we miss that moment, right, there will be other moments, it will come again. But that for me was the turning point, and I just became obsessed with trying to answer that question of how do I heal from sexual abuse. And so I started reading everything, just like you, like grabbing up everything that I could. I studied neuroscience, I did my master's in counseling psychology, and ultimately that led me, to this road that I'm on now of working with men and women who have experienced childhood sexual abuse.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Like, just like you, there's parts of that that I was not aware of. What is it that drew you to the neuroscience?
Mm.
That's fascinating stuff to me.
Yeah, so, I'm so excited to explore the modalities that you and I have, latched onto in our conversation today. And for me, neuroscience definitely was the thing that made the biggest difference for me. So, as I was doing my master's in counseling psychology, there was one of the classes we were reading Dan Siegel's book, The Developing Mind. And I was like, just like page turning that book. I mean, it's like a dry, like textbook, but really, I was just like, yes, yes, oh my God, yes. And like everything that he was describing about, how your behavior is impacted by, how the brain is wired and the belief systems and the activation and the fight, flight, free, like all of that. It's, for me, the biggest thing that happened when I began to look at trauma through the brain, through this entry point, is I began to see trauma as an injury to a system in me, right? So I could equate it to something that was familiar and that I could relate to. I could equate it to, like, if I fall and I break my arm, I've experienced an injury. And what do we do when we have an injury, right? Scream like hell, you know, call the ambulance, call the doctor, right? And the doctor comes in and the doctor has a protocol, right? The doctor doesn't look at my arm and go, well, okay, for you, we're going to do this, very, different special thing. No, there's a system in place that they use with maybe minor adaptations. And when I started to latch onto that, I really thought, what if trauma, what if sexual abuse comes down to an injury to the brain and the nervous system? Might there be protocols? Might there be steps that we can take to heal that injury? And as soon as I was just off to the races at that point. And it was like, experiment with this. What strategy works here? What intervention do I need here to heal my amygdala, right? What intervention do I need here to change the way my brain is wired? What intervention do I need here to calm my nervous system? And using myself as a guinea pig in this way, right? Trying this out and that out. And it took something for me, Contessa, that felt like this big whole like ball of spaghetti. Like I didn't know where to start and I didn't know how to get there. And it felt insurmountable, quite honestly. It started to put things into a very approachable, very doable structure so that I could just think about it as what's the next step and what's the next step.
I love that. Brain science just fascinates the crap out of me, not even gonna lie. When you think about neuroscience and all that you've learned and what you applied and now that you're teaching other people, do you have a favorite tool?
Yes, I do. It's a very silly tool, but it's an amazing thing that works because of how the brain is just set up. So when we are in our heads and when we are having all of these negative thoughts, like I remember those days where it really felt like as soon as I woke up in the morning to the minute I put my head down at night, my brain was just going, right? Just constant chatter. What's wrong with you? You're an idiot. You're stupid. You can't do anything right. You're too fat. You're blah, blah, blah. Like it was just an onslaught, right, of all of these negative messages. And I teach a lot of interventions and a lot of strategies and tools for quieting the mind and getting out of that, constant chatter. But one of my favorite tools is actually to take those negative words and to sing them.
Can we hear one?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have to allow yourself to really tap into like your inner child or the part of you that doesn't give an F about anything, right? And to just go full out, because the more you like full on sing, like you're in the shower and nobody's watching, the more it shifts your brain. And it wakes up, the creative side of your brain. It calms down and quiets the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So I'll just use some of my old kind of phrases. For whatever reason, I often end up sounding like a Broadway singer.
Oh,
But you can use any tune. Like I've heard my clients like turn it into a rap, right? Heavy metal, like whatever. Okay, so for example, if you're in your head and your thoughts are going, 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 pause, and then you sing them out loud. Just take all of those words and sing them. So for example, it might be something like, Rachel, you're such an idiot. You can't do anything right. When are you going to grow up? When are you going to get your shit together? What's wrong with you? Nobody's ever going to love you. You're a loser.
I feel like it's a movie and you're about to be your own hero.
But you notice, like, what I always notice with this particular strategy is immediately I start to laugh, right? And laughter is one of the greatest tools we have to de-trigger, to come out of our shit. And when you put these words to song, oh my gosh, they sound a little ridiculous, right? They lose like all that dark energy. And so I think one of the biggest pieces of healing, to my mind, is beginning to recognize the untruth of all of this bullshit that's in our head, right?
Yes, yes. There's so many lies that are wrapped up, like you were talking about that. How quickly you take on the burden of trauma, right? Whenever I was raped when I was 6, my dad had picked me up right after the event, and he didn't know what had happened. But immediately when I saw him, I felt this tremendous amount of responsibility to keep him safe. And so I vowed to not say a word, right? Because that would hurt him. And at 6 years old, I'm somehow responsible for him, right? Dang. And so, if you play that out for, 34 years here, how much responsibility do I take in places that's really just a lie? It's not my responsibility, right? Like
Mhm.
how you feel or what you do and what you choose is not our responsibility, but I was taking responsibility for everything.
Oh yeah. Oh
Gosh,
yeah.
yeah, and felt guilty for it, right?
Of
And
course.
guilt is one of those things that I find that most of the clients that I work with have guilt, right?
Big time.
And I
Yeah.
felt guilty for everything. And guilt is such a lie, right? And what I like to tell people is, did you rob a bank? If you did, you should probably feel guilty about that, right?
Yeah.
Did you,
Yeah.
did you kick a dog? That's probably something about, right? But
Yes,
guilt
Contessa.
for being true to who you are or feeling guilty for how you feel, that's not places where guilt is supposed to be,
Exactly
right?
so.
But
Exactly so.
I found that guilt showed up in every way, and
Mhm.
I not only felt guilty for myself, but I felt guilty for other people I didn't even
Right.
know. And then guilt was a weapon that I could use on myself. And if there was astute people out there, they started using guilt on guilting me.
Oh, of course. They'll be so happy to give you the blame, right? When they, yeah, see that you're someone who's happy to take it.
And
Yeah.
they're all lies. There's so much lies that come
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
these events, and starting to acknowledge those is the most important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when, and that's the other thing, like when thinking about it as an injury, it stopped being something that like was like, okay, this is something that I caused. No, this was an injury that was caused by another person, and it sucks that I have the cleanup work, right? It does suck. It's not so fair, but at the end of the day, this is my life. And so if I can strip away those layers of lies, then I can get back to who I really am and do the things in my life that I really want to do as I begin to understand that I bought into a whole bunch of things that I didn't need to and I could release ultimately. So I'm so curious because I know that NLP is your baby, just like neuroscience is my baby, where I often go to first and kind of work through that entry point. NLP has become your baby. So tell us more about NLP and like what that's all about for you and why you love it so much and how it helped you in your journey.
Yeah, so growing up, I would always say I want to be a lawyer. And not because I wanted to stand up for people, but because I really want to free access to criminals so that I can figure out how their brain works and why.
Oh, got it.
I'm just so curious, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and so what neurolinguistics is it's neuro, right? The brain science, linguistics, the language, and then programming. And so what's fascinating to me is just overall human behavior and
Mm,
why people do what they do. And you kind of mentioned this in the neuroscience, right? We have the cerebellum, we have the limbic system, we have the prefrontal cortex. And what NLP does for me, I'm a highly auditory person. So I can listen to somebody and in their language, right? All the parts of the brain are working together and it reveals their belief systems, what they think about themselves, where the trauma really is, right? Some people think that the
mm,
trauma is a lot closer to where they are in this time, when really the trauma
mm,
goes back a lot further, right? And
right.
with NLP, what happens is it's all about the language and the patterns of thought. And it just is so fascinating to me. I love it. And every time I get to talk to somebody, it's something new, but yet it's always the same, right? Like you were talking about,
Yes.
there's a protocol. And one of the things that was a real jarring effect on me was recognizing that my experience is not unique.
Mm-hmm.
What I went through, what someone did to me may be unique to me, but my experience of it is not unique, right? We can sit here and say, my clients have experienced guilt, my clients have experienced anger, frustration,
Right.
depression, right? Because those are all
They're
experiences,
all the outcomes.
all
Yeah.
what come the fallout that we have to clean up, right? And
Yes.
with NLP, what happens is it's all caught up in the language. Most people don't know it, but they are still speaking from their place of trauma, right?
Yes.
I can't,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it right. They're not only saying it outwards, right? But this is the conversation that is taking place up here that is going nonstop.
Right.
And it's a pattern. It becomes a pattern, a way of being that you don't even recognize and that you think is normal at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so NLP helps me to kind of crack that open and say, here's the pattern. Let's go back and start where the real trauma is, right?
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, the
Oh, I
brain,
love that.
I can still not get enough of that stuff.
I know. It's good. And we're still learning, right? There's still so much to learn and discover about the brain and how it works.
Yeah.
But I love that description of NLP, and it resonates with me very deeply. I think one of the things that I came across in my journey of just studying was just a quote from the Buddhist text, which is that, language is like this lever that we can use in our lives, and that it has this power to shift our character and to inform and influence, our experience.
You will believe your own voice over all others. If
Yes.
you're telling
Yeah.
yourself I'm ugly or I'm fat, guess what
Yep.
you believe? You're gonna
Yep.
believe you're ugly and you're
That's
fat,
right.
and your subconscious brain is going to prove it to you.
Yes.
It is there
Correct.
to back up what the conscious and what you speak, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yes, language is one of the most important things that we can, and most simple things that we can start to draw our attention
Right.
to start to reveal, oh, that's
Mhm.
what I'm doing here.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, I know you probably know this too, and will agree. Survivors, what they do is they tend to ask why a lot.
Oh, yes, honey.
Yeah.
That is a big old question. That's the human question, but also survivors are definitely in that space all the time trying to explain why.
Also,
Why
such
did this happen? Why is that?
right? Because your subconscious brain, based on your language, will give you an answer. So if you say,
Uh,
why am I so fat? Your subconscious brain is going to say, because you just ate that cake. And the reason why you ate that cake is because you feel like you're not good enough.
mhm.
Any
Right.
other questions?
Right. Right.
Brain will give you an answer, and it's based on your patterns and your language, and you will
Mm.
believe your voice over all others. So we could come in there as coaches and healers and say, of course you're good enough, Rachel. You don't need to eat
Mhm.
that whole cake and then feel like
Mhm.
you're fat, right? But that won't mean anything. And
Correct.
you have
Yeah.
the ability to not only say it to yourself, but to really embody it and believe it for yourself.
Yeah.
And it
I
comes
dig
through
that.
language.
So I showed you mine. Show me yours. What is one of your favorite NLP strategies or tools that you teach your clients?
We're having way too much fun, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, so
We earned it, girl. We earned fun. Let me tell you.
my favorite tool, I call it CTFAR.
Okay.
I know it's a bunch of letters, but really what it is so C stands for circumstance. We
Mhm.
are all in some sort of circumstance. Right now, our circumstance is that we're on this video chat thingy. I'm real technical sometimes. Look out. Our circumstance is that we're here together, right, via video.
Got it.
Now, we can change that circumstance, but it's a lot harder to change circumstances than it is to change thoughts, right?
Mhm.
And so what happens after you're in circumstances, naturally you have a thought about that. So for example, if you'll play with me here, right?
Sure.
What is a thought, a potential thought that you can have about being here on video?
Hmm. That's in the like insecure negative realm, like a challenging thought that might come up. Oh, it might be like, what are people going to think of me?
Yeah. And so when you think, what are people going to think of me? What does that lead you to feel?
Maybe doubtful or insecure, or even just like alert, like kind of on guard.
Yeah, on guard, right? And so whenever you feel doubtful, insecure, and on guard, what kind of actions do you then go out and take?
Well, normally, like I wouldn't even be able to do this, right? If I got fully into that space, right? I would just say, "Never mind, Contessa, I don't want to do it. Forget it." Right? I would abandon the opportunity, right?
And
Um,
then what's the end result of that?
Man, I miss out. I miss out.
So let's go all the way back up to the top. We have the same circumstance. We're here on video. What is a different thought that's completely opposite of the negative one?
Hmm. Yeah, this is such a cool opportunity, and I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah, and what does that lead you to feeling?
Excited. Yeah, ready to go.
what kind of actions do you take when you're excited?
Yeah, I follow through. I take action. I do it. I take some chances, or I might take some risks.
And what's the end result of that?
This badass video that we're going to get to share with all of our people.
Right? So it all starts with the thought, right? And based
Yes.
on your language, you have the ability to pick any thought you want. How many thoughts do you think anyone could pick that you could pick about this
Hundreds,
circumstance?
millions, so many, so many. Yeah,
Unlimited, really,
that's
right?
right.
And
That's right.
so you can always take a circumstance, any circumstance, and then you can go ahead and play it out, right? So anybody can do this anywhere. If they're laying in bed and they're feeling like they cannot get up, they can
Hmm.
play this out, right? Circumstances, I'm laying in bed. So what is the thought that plays out based on you laying in bed? And
Yeah,
what does that lead you to feeling? What actions do you take based on that feeling? And what's the end result? And then go back and just play it out and with a
in a
completely,
different way. I dig that.
and because you then
Yeah.
structure your language and you get to pick and choose which thought you want to plug in,
Yeah.
you then can already know what the end result is going to be. You know you're going to abandon ship,
You right? Yeah.
or you can take a chance.
Yeah.
And the only thing that we
Mm.
changed here was one thing. What was that one thing?
Just the thought, man. Just the thought.
Just the,
Yeah. Man, we are cut from the same cloth. It's so fascinating, really, it is, because I think a lot of NLP is in my work, even without me knowing it was NLP, as I hear you talk about and describe what you're doing. And I think such a powerful piece that's coming out of what you just shared there is the action of choice. So many of us who experience trauma and abuse, we end up in this place of feeling like we're just at the mercy of our life. We're just at the mercy of our thoughts and our feelings.
and that we're
And I think
powerless to do anything about it.
yeah, exactly. And I think what you and I are both kind of here today saying is, folks, you have so much more choice. You have so much more say over these things. This is not something that's out of your control. You can put your hands on the steering wheel here. You can change that thought. You can actively choose and change that thought and change your experience as a result.
And I think one of the things that resonated with both of us is none of this takes forever, right?
No.
You practice CTFAR a few times and then you start applying it, right? You practice singing out, right, your
Right.
music in whatever way makes
Yeah.
sense to you. Then
Yeah.
you already start to change your brain chemistry. You already start to change your language. You already start to change your behavior
Very
around
much so.
how you feel about choice or how you feel about yourself or who you even think you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, that was one of the biggest reliefs that I experienced in my own healing because I certainly had been told by plenty of trained professionals that this was a lifelong sentence. This is just how it was going to be. I was going to have to learn to deal with it. I was like, that has got to be wrong. Like, I don't know what the answer is yet, but that
What
has
I
got
said
to
to
be
all
wrong.
of those people.
Yes, right? Oh my gosh. And so, yeah, it is like a practice. Like your brain will change, your system will heal with that consistency of practice. It's just like, anything else. And that is such good news for those who feel really daunted by the path ahead. And that the practices, like I didn't say sit down and meditate for 5 hours.
Right.
No, it's those little interventions, it's those little things that you do in your day to day that add up, to the big change. So we've been sharing kind of our favorite tools and the things that have really resonated with us, but I know from our prior conversation that we both have explored other modalities, right? We've looked at CBT, DBT, things like EMDR or somatic therapy, and kind of looking at the landscape of modalities. And I think that um, while we all gravitate maybe to something that feels like that's my baby, like I was saying, that's my baby, and that's the thing that I really love and that resonates with me the most, we've both intuitively looked out there into the world and said, what else? What other tools are available? And let's talk a little bit about the importance of that. So while people may find that this particular modality really resonates with me, really, settles my system, helps me out, why is it important to explore other modalities and build out your toolkit with other strategies?
I think it's easy to get stuck, right? If you only have one modality or if you only have one place where you go, like a lot of my clients, they see therapists too, right? I
Yeah.
highly encourage that. if you are just stuck, if you're just on one road, right, how many options do you have to be able to take a right or a left, or to be able to see
Mm-hmm.
choices you have? When you are just on one path and in one modality, you are limited. You've limited yourself from potential opportunities, all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, right? And also, you tend to get stuck because once you get further down the road, then the easier it is to say, I already know that, or I've already tried
Ooh,
that.
yeah, that's a danger. Yes, right.
Big red
Yeah.
danger sign here, right? It's easy
Mm-hmm.
to get into that trap of I've already tried that, it doesn't work, or
Yep.
I already know about that without giving it any more consideration or going any.
Mm.
So I feel
Yeah.
like by broadening and filling up your toolbox, that it's a lot harder to get stuck, because if you say I already know that, then it's time to go to a different drawer then, instead
Mm-hmm.
of now you have no options.
Yeah.
What
I
about you?
agree with that. I think that's so on point. It's a great way to think about it. And, for me, I'll just add it's kind of the same thing, but the idea of, I know for me, there are times where turning it into a song, it works. It's like done, good. Yep, shifted out of it on. And
Mhm.
then maybe on another day, for whatever reason, the stars are not aligned and that tool doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I shift and I use a different tool. Sometimes I need something that helps me get into my body more, right? Sometimes I need something that is really a little bit more like fierce and
Mhm.
direct with myself.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I need a tool that's very nurturing or roomy and ooey gooey, like these sorts of things. So yes, so important to build out all of these tools, not because you're going to need them like every single day. Like what I'll say for myself is like there are tools that I teach in my program that are life skills, so I do use them all the time, like making clear requests, setting boundaries, these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But managing like triggers, like once a month, you know once a year, I mean, it's just so rare, right? But if it does come up, I want to have a toolkit that's available to me there to be able to address it.
Yeah, one of the things that I think was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn is crap never stops coming up.
Oh man, girl.
More
Yes,
or you
yes.
feel like you've gotten over something, crap never stops coming up. And so
Mhm.
what one tool that got you through a certain scenario may not be
Yeah,
what's necessary for you down the road, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that kind of brings us nicely to this conversation or this question that we've been bouncing back and forth, which is what does it mean to actually be healed? I think this is a question that always comes. When am I going to be done with this? Right? When is it going to be over? And I think we have a very common, similar answer to that. But I'd love to hear your response to that. What does that really mean for you when you say I am healed? What does
Whenever,
that really mean?
whenever I claim I am healed, what I'm really claiming is I know who I am, and nobody or nothing can take that away from me.
Mm,
When hardships come along, or I may stumble and fall, or tragedy may strike, that doesn't take away from the core of who I am. And
mm.
whenever I feel, whenever I claim I am healed, I know who I am, is what I'm saying. And just in case anybody wants to know, I'm powerful, successful,
Yes,
beautiful, courageous.
yes, bring it.
I love myself.
Not myself,
Yeah.
myself.
All I can say that, but I also believe it.
You
I,
believe it?
I
Yeah.
know what my purpose is, right? On the other side of healing, I believe there's purpose, there's opportunity for,
Mm,
and the purpose of my life is to help other women be more bold, daring, and encourage them to share their lives, and to be a beacon of hope for those who still hurt, and a light of example for my family, so that we can heal the world one heart at a time, and encourage other women to be more bold, daring, and share their stories without permission, to just live their lives without permission. So
mhm, mhm.
being healed means I know who I am, and on the other side of that, I get to live out a purpose.
Yeah. Man, cheers to that. I love that so much, Contessa. Yeah, fist bump. Boop. I dig that. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so inspired by that. and I'm going to take it and steal it and add it to my definition. You know, the way I think about this, I am healed. What that represents for me is that my life is no longer about recovery. That there is a point where it stopped being about looking at the past
Yeah.
and navigating the past and trying to handle and manage and figure it out and resolve it. That there was a very clear moment and distinct time in my life where that stopped. I am complete about this trauma. I'm complete about the past. Yeah, it is a part of my story. It is not my whole story. It's no longer in the big spotlight. It's just now integrated and a part of my life. And from that place, my life now becomes about growing. My life becomes about navigating life as it comes, because you are correct. Life does not stop happening. And so the next challenge that arises, or a heartache that happens, or something that I'm disappointed around, but I'm dealing with those life circumstances from the place of who I am today, exactly like who I know I am, from the place of resilience, from the place of choice, from the place of empowerment and autonomy, and not from the place of history, right? That old historical self
Yeah.
doesn't get to come in and run the show.
Yeah.
And if that old historical self does try to come onto the scene, I'm equipped, right?
Yeah.
Yes, right? Like I am equipped. So it can't get its claws in me. It can't get its grips in me, right? I can very clearly see the distinction between the truth and the lie,
Yeah.
right? And I can act from my truth. And from that place, do the things in my life that I want to do, right? Have a powerful, loving relationship with my partner, communicate my needs, do the things that I love and care about, which it definitely includes the work that I get to do with men and women every day. Yeah. And then just be. I think, you know, I often say the reason why my program is called Beyond Surviving is because there is more than just surviving life. You know, I want to be living it. And that's how I feel, you know, every day, is that I'm in my life, I'm living it. Some days are hard, some days there are challenges, but I'm present for it, and I'm not dropping back into all of that history and trauma.
I think one of the most significant things you said, even though you didn't settle on the word, was it's clear how much you trust yourself.
Hey, yeah,
You trust yourself to come back. You trust yourself
yeah.
to make choices, to move forward, to help others, right? Like, I think healed is about getting to that place of trust.
Beautiful. Well, on that fabulous word. Oh my gosh. Such a good conversation. Thank you so much for being here and chatting with me today. Let's tell people how they can get in touch with us and continue the conversation. How do people reach you?
The place where I'm most active and carrying on the conversation is in my Facebook group. It is, you can just go to rebelrisingfbgroup.com and that'll lead you to where we're at.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure we have that listed and linked to in all of the notes. And best place to connect with me is rachelgrantcoaching.com. So you can come on over to the website, check out all the resources, learn more about the Beyond Surviving program.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome. Right on.
We could do this all day long.
I know, I know. People, you got to get on to what's next in your life, and so do we. But I've so enjoyed this time with you, and continuing the conversation with you for many years to come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Contessa. Take care.